Azula is a manipulative firebending prodigy. She far outclasses all of our main characters in terms of bending aptitude and possesses comparable intelligence. By all accounts, she should have been able to capture the Avatar and bring glory to her nation. However, she made one major miscalculation that cost her everything. When Zuko was born, Ozai was unsure if he had firebending. This led to him almost banishing his son because he figured it would look bad if he had a child who didn't have firebending. Azula conversely was showered with praise and immediately accepted by her father for her prodigious firebending. This made Azula derive pleasure and fulfillment from the parenting style of Ozai. She grew up believing power and fear were above all, and that the best way to ultimately win was to use power and fear. Zuko, on the other hand, was parented with love and care from his mother. These separate parenting styles fundamentally changed how they grew up. They became opposites in very substantive ways. While the parenting Zuko received was fiery and sincere, the parenting Azula received was charred and hollow. On the surface, Zuko looked weak and insignificant, but through a lot of dedicated work, Zuko mastered himself and his identity became impregnable. Conversely, once Azula received a significant amount of pushback, she folded. Zuko has a rough exterior and even a scar to show for it. Azula has a perfect exterior, not a hair out of place. But on the inside, Zuko is strong and Azula is weak. Both Zuko and Azula become jealous of each other because of what one has and the other lacks. Zuko was jealous of the strength and approval from his father that Azula got. Azula was jealous of the genuine love and affection that Zuko got. While the divergent parenting styles play a role in their ultimate outlook on life, we must also recognize the innately divergent characteristics between the two. Zuko is a clumsy ball of passion and Azula is strong and tactful. These are their innate characteristics, and there's no reason to assume that they would change given different parenting styles. The chief difference was that Zuko was able to have his temperaments and idiosyncrasies channeled towards their proper end. Azula didn't have that chance. Strength isn't bad, oppression is. Tactfulness and charisma aren't bad, using them to insidious ends is. Zuko's passions were channeled towards selfless love. Azula's strengths were ordered towards not hate, but selfish indifference. We typically think of hate as the opposite of love. While that can be true in many instances, I believe that apathy is a more apt opposing force to love. Hatred can be a part of love and a sign of its vitality. Hatred is love in its most ferocious and militant form. Whether it is a good or bad hatred depends precisely on what it's aimed at. Hatred aimed at the cancer patient is bad. Hatred aimed at the patient's cancer is good. And I mean good, not just acceptable or admissible, but good. If you love the person, you must hate his cancer. It is therefore fair to say that indifference is a more consistent opposing force to love. There is no way to love someone while being indifferent or tolerant towards the disease that ravages them. Azula doesn't show a malevolent hatred towards anyone, but just a callous indifference. She doesn't care about Aang or Zuko any more than she cares about Mai or Ty Lee. They're all just amorphous tools aiding her or hurting her in achieving her goals. And she uses fear and domination to control everyone in her path, a strategy that she picked up from her father. Azula tries to be like her father in every way, most notably her father's ability to play on people's weaknesses. She uses Ty Lee's sense of security to recruit her, similar to how Ozai uses Zuko's partiality towards his mother to keep him from leaving on the Day of Black Sun. Azula's psyche is so single-mindedly optimized to being a manipulative genius that she's able to infiltrate and outdo the Dai Li without shedding a drop of blood by staging a coup. She's also able to lie straight through her teeth without any shift in her heartbeat. Such a feat is unrivaled within the entire Avatarverse. Over the course of their adventures, Zuko realizes that fear and dominance are not modes of leadership that are conducive to success. In Book 1, Zuko is angsty with a chip on his shoulder. He tries to prove that he's the strongest and someone who can't be trifled with at every moment he gets. But it doesn't work. Azula does this as well more effectively because she's smarter and stronger than her brother. But ultimately, all this did was make her eventual decline delayed and magnified. She manipulates Ty Lee and Mai onto her team. She doesn't convince them through genuine means. She manipulates them through coercion. This is similar to Ozai and how he manipulated Zuko and Azula to try and follow his path. Thankfully, with Iroh's help, we see Zuko succeed with love being the binding force. Conversely, Azula's ramshackle team eventually falls out because there were bonds built on fear. Azula's bond was built on sand, Zuko's bonds were built on solid rock. Once Mei's love for others overrides her fear of Azula, she rebels and this makes her snap. This love quality was for the weak people like Iroh and Zuko. How could she be bested by it? Her mother, brother, and friends all have this love quality that ultimately makes them win in the end. It's something she's unable to compute. For people who went against that to so constantly and thoroughly outdo her put her in an agitated frenzy, a paroxysmic fit of mental derangement. When the show begins, we see Zuko on a quest to capture the Avatar. Ozai gave Zuko the impossible task of finding the Avatar in hopes that he would never return. 3 years later, Ozai gave Azula the now very possible task of finding the Avatar in hopes that she would succeed and return. Ozai wanted to do with Azula what he did with Iroh. He wanted to have the younger Firebender usurp the older Firebender's position and become the new Fire Lord. However, that impossible mission that he gave Zuko made him become more confident and strong. Azula instead failed time and time again and lost her consciousness and became a crazed creature. Towards the end of the main series, Azula had lost all of her trust in everyone. If her friends and even her father betrayed her, anyone could betray her. The people washing her feet could secretly be plotting against her. All of this manifests in a sort of schizophrenia where she conjures illusions of her mother in her head. She believes now that her mother has actually been conspiring against her since the beginning of her life. She manifests all of her latent insecurities into this conception of her mother. On some subconscious level, she realizes that her mother loves her, but she refuses to accept it. Her ability to accept it is obstructed by her need for power, control, and acknowledgement from her father. On the beach episode, we catch a glimpse of Azula's insecurities over this fact. Even before any of her friends or her father betrayed her, she had this insecurity about her mother. She has always secretly been jealous of her brother's true loving relationship with her mother. In the end, she's defeated by her younger brother and a peasant water girl. She's left screaming like the spoiled brat she is. In the Search comic, we see her schizophrenia worsen. When she's riding with Appa with Team Avatar, she asks them if her mother secretly hired them to somehow play a role in her downfall. This is her way of coping with the fact that she was wrong, more than a hair out of place, and fatally miscalculated. It is her attempt at shifting the blame for all the bad things that happened to her. All of the blame is hoisted onto her mother as a form of insecurity. And if everything bad that's happened to her can be traced back to her mother, then it makes sense that in order to stop all the bad things from happening, she needs to kill her mother. And when we meet her mother later on in the comic, we find out that that's exactly what she planned on doing. She was so delusional that she was willing to kill her mother in hopes that it would ameliorate all of her problems. She is horribly mistaken. This is at best a respite from her pain, and at worst would drive her deeper into madness. Thankfully, she failed. In Smoke and Shadow a year later, she seems to have found some semblance of peace. She doesn't pin all of her issues on her mother and can speak much more coherently, but she's still the manipulative Azula that we all know. She stages a whole plot to manipulate Zuko to act more aggressively, revealing the dormant Ozai that was still lurking within him as it became ever more evanescent over the years. In this way, she would be acting as a leader from the shadows. And this idea is worth further exploring. Zuko and Azula are fundamentally opposites. Even their names start with the opposing letter of the alphabet. Their opposing forces do not have to be in conflict, but they can actually work together in unison. As I explained in the beginning, Azula's traits are actually quite great if channeled in the right direction. That kind of intelligence and power is very significant, and this is why I believe that Azula is a bundle of wasted potential. She could have been something of intimate importance to the Fire Nation and the world at large, but she wasn't. Whether you believe she was a victim of environment or a victim of genetics, she had the potential to be great and never realized it. At the end of Smoke and Shadow, there's the idea that Zuko needs to be a more respected leader. He needs to command the type of respect that Ozai had. That's the one thing that Iroh had that Zuko never was able to adopt within the series. Iroh, while infinitely kind and loving, would always be able to command respect. Zuko doesn't have that yet, and conversely, Azula needs to learn love from Zuko. She needs to be able to use and channel her abilities in a loving way towards loving ends. And if we see Azula's story continue, I believe that it'll be Zuko who ultimately does that. This is perhaps what we will see in the Book of Zuko movie that's coming out in 2026. That's just my speculation anyways. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll catch you all next time. Peace.